What were they really fighting for? A story inspired by Ibn Rushd. Most people believe conflicts are about ideas. They are usually wrong. People rarely fight for ideas. They fight for what they believe those ideas protect. Let me tell you a story. Not a story exactly as history recorded it, but a story inspired by a real man, a real conflict, and a very real lesson. History gives us the names, the books, the debates, the consequences. The rest belongs to imagination, but sometimes imagination helps us see truths that facts alone cannot reveal. So imagine a young student in Cordoba. Cordoba, the 12th century, a city filled with books, a city filled with scholars, a city filled with questions. Its libraries held more books than most kingdoms. Its streets carried merchants, poets, physicians, judges, and philosophers. Knowledge flowed through the city like a river, and among all those names, one stood above the rest. A man admired across the Islamic world, a judge, a physician, a philosopher. Ibn Rushd. In another part of the city lived a young student. He admired Ibn Rushd, perhaps too much. He copied passages from his books by candlelight. He memorized his arguments. He dreamed of one day studying under him. To him, Ibn Rushd represented everything noble about knowledge: the courage to ask questions, the discipline to seek truth, the refusal to surrender to ignorance. And then something changed. Rumors began to spread. Scholars criticized Ibn Rushd. Sermons warned against his ideas. Arguments filled the city. People took sides. The student could not understand it. How could anyone oppose a man like Ibn Rushd? The answer seemed obvious. They were afraid of knowledge, afraid of truth, afraid of reason. At least, that is what he believed. Until one evening, a gathering of scholars had been called. The student entered a great hall lit by hundreds of candles. The air felt heavy. Voices rose and fell like waves. Arguments crossed the room like drawn swords. The student sat quietly in the corner, listening, watching, trying to understand. What puzzled him was not the disagreement. Scholars disagreed all the time. That was normal. What puzzled him was the intensity, the emotion, the certainty. Why did these men care so much? Beside him sat an old teacher, a respected scholar, a man whose beard had turned white long ago. He watched the debate in silence. Finally, the student whispered, "They are fighting over ideas." The old teacher smiled. "No." The student, "No?" The old man slowly shook his head. "They believe they are fighting over ideas." The student looked around the room. Everything seemed to be about ideas. What else could they be fighting over? The teacher did not answer immediately. Instead, he pointed toward Ibn Rushd. "What do you think he is protecting?" The student answered, "Philosophy." The old teacher smiled. "No." "Aristotle." Again the teacher shook his head. The student, "Then what?" The teacher looked toward Ibn Rushd, and for the first time his voice became almost, "He is protecting the belief that truth has nothing to fear from inquiry." The student fell silent. For the first time he realized, philosophy was not the destination. It was only the path. The teacher then pointed toward those opposing Ibn Rushd. "And what do you think they are protecting?" This time the student answered, "Power." The teacher smiled again. "No." The debate continued around them. Voices grew louder. Passions intensified. The old man leaned closer. "Listen carefully." The student listened, really listened. One scholar stood and spoke with great emotion. "If these ideas spread," he said, "what will happen to the people? Another rose. What will happen to faith? Another. What will happen to the order that holds society together? The student listened, and for the first time, he heard something beneath the arguments, something beneath the words. Concern, fear, responsibility. The teacher turned toward him. Do you see it now? The student remained silent. The old man continued. Many of them believe they are protecting something sacred. The student looked across the room, and suddenly, everything changed. The arguments had not changed, the people had not changed, the words had not changed. Only his understanding had changed. For the first time, he no longer saw enemies. He no longer saw villains. He saw guardians, different guardians, protecting different things. One side protecting inquiry, the other protecting certainty. One side protecting understanding, the other protecting stability. Neither believed they were defending themselves. Both believed they were defending something essential. The student sat quietly, listening, watching, thinking. And then the teacher spoke again, more softly this time. The mistake of youth is believing people fight over ideas. The student looked at him. The old man continued. Most people fight over meaning. The room seemed to grow silent. When meaning feels threatened, people call it an argument. They call it a disagreement. They call it a conflict. But what they feel is loss. The student never forgot those words. Years passed, the debates ended, the candles burned out, the city changed, empires rose and fell. The student became a scholar himself, then a judge, then an advisor to men of influence. And one day, two respected men appeared before him, each convinced the other was wrong, each demanding a decision, each defending his position with certainty. As they argued, the judge remembered that night, the candles, the voices, the old teacher. And instead of asking, "Who is right?" he asked a different question. "What are you trying to protect?" The room fell silent, because suddenly the argument was no longer about positions. It was about what lay beneath them. And in that moment, the judge understood what his teacher had seen long ago. People rarely fight for what they say they are fighting for. They fight for what they believe must never be lost. Perhaps that is true of kingdoms. Perhaps it is true of faith. Perhaps it is true of ideas. And perhaps it is true of all human beings. Because behind every position, there is a concern. Behind every concern, a value. Behind every value, a story. Behind every story, a meaning. And when meaning feels threatened, people fight to protect it. Some stories entertain, others change the way we see the world. If you enjoy stories that reveal what lies beneath human behavior, stay with us. The journey is only beginning.